What can a government do in order to improve education of the local population? A government can do a lot of things. Here is a list of potential area of reform. The first thing that the government can do is to introduce pre-primary education. We know from psychologists that if we force people to go to school earlier, we take them out of the family, and somehow we prepare them for schooling. We teach them how to stay with others. We teach them how to exercise their hands in order to write, and so on. There is a compelling evidence that pre-primary education is quite beneficial, especially for people at the bottom of the social ladder to improve their expected educational career. A second thing that the government can do is to force people by law to stay in school. Expansion of compulsory education has been pursued by several countries in different years. The first country which introduced compulsory education was Prussia during half of the 19th century. Then it was followed by France, UK, and much later by Mediterranean countries. A third policy, which is very debated in the literature, is to reduce the extent of tracking. You know, because you are German, that your model has been exported in many other countries. The dual or even the three-track system is now existing in the Netherlands, in Italy. The point is, when do you make people choose their track? Germany and Austria are known to have a very early tracking, while other countries typically track people at the age of 15, 16, even 17. By changing the tracking age, you change the distribution of educational attainment, because the later you track people, the more they can change their mind, and the more they can decide or revise their decision and go up to the university. Another policy which became more fashionable in recent years is to give school autonomy. I don't know in Germany, but definitely in UK, in US, and now also in Italy, there are legal proposals to allow the school head to hire their own teacher. The schoolmaster can select who he wants to hire. Or another proposal in the same area, let the school choose the content of the education. These kind of proposals have some advantages and disadvantages. Selecting the teacher at the local level may provide better adaptability of the school content to the local situation, but also may increase variation across the different regions of the countries. School accountability. School accountability are the system where you check and balance the achievement of the student using national tests. There are different systems to achieve that, but in principle, you basically want to give more autonomy on one side, but on the other side, you want to keep control of the schools. Improving teacher qualifications, there are different strategies. You may become more selective in hiring teachers. You may introduce competition to hire teachers. You may create a teaching school which may be more or less selective, but in principle you can improve the quality of the teacher. You may also support students on the financial side, especially at the tertiary level. And here you may support them in different ways. You may reduce tuition or even abolish tuition. You may provide scholarship. You may provide loan. And these alternatives have different implications from the point of view of the student, and also they have different consequences in terms of enrollment rates. And finally, you may provide university with greater autonomy in, again, hiring their professors, deciding the content of the education, or, for example, selecting students on admission. How can we measure all these dimensions? It is almost impossible to measure all these dimensions, and in our research, what we have done has been going through annuaria of each country, recording when the government was introducing a reform, taking note of whether the reform was opening or closing the system, and adding all the reform up. In this way, you find a graph of this type where whenever there is a step up, it means that the government has introduced a reform in that specific year, opening up the system. When there is a step down, it means that the government was reversing the policy in a direction of closing the system. So if you bring all the countries together, you will see that the different countries are moving in different directions over time. At the same time, we know the educational attainment of the corresponding population who were born in the years which were closer to the introduction of the reform. Suppose, for example, a reform which was introduced in my country in 1963. Compulsory education was raised from 5 to 8 years. Those who were born in 1952 were untouched by the reform. Those who were born in 1954 were forced to stay in school 3 years longer. So by contrasting the educational attainment of people born in 1 year before the reform with people born 1 year after the reform, we can get an idea of what is the potential effect of the reform on the educational choices of people. Using this strategy and putting all these reforms together, we get an idea of how powerful was the reforming activity of the government. And you may also check not only whether the reform was powerful in raising the educational attainment, you also would like to see that the reform was affecting in reducing the inequality. Inequality within each generation. But also there is an inequality in an intergenerational dimension. That is to say, if I do force people to stay in school longer, I reduce the dependence of the educational choices of children on the educational choices of father. Just because by breaking the link between the two, the reform is affecting and improving the intergenerational mobility.